Welcome to No Longer Conformed. We're studying the book of Acts. In this session, we'll be looking at Acts chapter 18, verses 18 to 22, returned to Antioch. Let's read those verses. Acts chapter 18, beginning with verse 18. So Paul still remained a good while when he took leave of the brethren, and then he took leave of the brethren and sailed for Syria, and Priscilla and Aquila were with him. He had his hair cut off at Cenchrea, for he had taken a vow, and he came to Ephesus and left them there, but he himself entered the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to stay a longer time with them, he did not consent, but took leave of them, saying, I must by all means keep this coming feast in Jerusalem, but I will return again to you, God willing. And he sailed from Ephesus. And when he had landed at Caesarea and gone up and greeted the church, he went down to Antioch. So Paul's second missionary journey now is almost complete. These verses are Luke's record of the transition to the third journey. He returned to where the journey began, Antioch. Acts 15, verses 36 down to verse 41. It says, Then after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, Let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord and see how they're doing. Now Paul was determined to take with them John called Mark, but Paul insisted that they should not take with them the one who had departed from them in Pamphylia and had not gone on with them to the work. Then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another, and so Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and departed, being commended by the brethren to the grace of God, and he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. So before heading home, the apostle briefly stopped in Ephesus, a preview of the third journey, which was primarily in that city. And there are really three parts of this transition passage. Let's take a look at those. First, Paul visited Cenchrea for a haircut. Verse 18. So Paul still remained a good while. Then he took leave of the brethren and sailed for Syria, and Priscilla and Aquila were with him. He had his hair cut off at Cenchrea, for he had taken a vow. Remained a good while at Corinth without hindrance. Why did he leave? Well, it doesn't say. We learn that he made some sort of vow, and he had his hair cut off at Cenchrea, for he had taken a vow. The vow was most likely a Nazirite vow. In Numbers chapter 6, in verse 1, it says, back in the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 6, verse 1, it says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When either a man or a woman consecrates an offering to take a vow of a Nazirite to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and similar drink. He shall drink neither vinegar made from wine, nor vinegar made from similar drink. Neither shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from seed to skin. All the days of the vow of his separation no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. Then he shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow. All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean, even for his father or his mother, for his brother or his sister when they die, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation he shall be holy to the Lord. And if anyone dies very suddenly beside him, and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. On the 7th day he shall shave it. Then on the 8th he shall bring 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and make atonement for him, because he sinned in regard to the corpse. He shall sanctify his head on that same day. He shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation, and bring a male lamb in its first year as a trespass offering. But the former days shall be lost, because his separation was defiled. Now this is the law of the Nazarite. When the days of his separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and he shall present his offering to the Lord: 1 male lamb in its first year without blemish as a burnt offering, 1 ewe lamb in its first year without blemish as a sin offering, 1 ram without blemish as a peace offering, a basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, unleavened wafers, anointed with oil, and their grain offering with their drink offerings. Then the priest shall bring them before the Lord, and offer his sin offering and his burnt offering, and he shall offer the ram as a sacrifice of a peace offering to the Lord with the basket of unleavened bread. The priest shall also offer its grain offering and its drink offering. And then the Nazarite shall shave his consecrated head at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and shall take the hair from his consecrated head and put it on the fire which is under the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall take the boiled shoulder of the ram, 1 unleavened cake of the basket, and 1 unleavened wafer, and put them upon the hands of the Nazarite after he has shaved his consecrated hair, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. They are holy for the priest. Therefore, with the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering. After the Nazarite may drink wine. This is the law of the Nazarite, who vows to the Lord the offering for his separation, and besides that, whatever else his hand is able to provide, according to the vow which he takes. So he must do according to the law of his separation. I wanted to read that because this was not just some quick promise that Paul made. The Nazarite vow is very involved, and it's very serious, that if it got disrupted, as it says in the law, by being too close to somebody when they died, that person dying would defile you, and you'd have to go and get yourself clean by offerings, and then it starts all over again. It doesn't matter how many days had gone by, those days are lost, and you've got to fulfill all those days again. This was serious. So whatever it was, this vow that Paul made, it was a very serious thing. Possibly the vow was in connection with the vision. In Acts chapter 18, verses 9 and 10, it says, where it said, "Now the Lord spoke to Paul in the night by a vision, do not be afraid, but speak and do not keep silent, for I am with you, and no one will attack you to hurt you, for I have many people in the city." It might have been a vow to finish the work he was called to. The bottom line is that Paul was a loyal, practicing Jew. He was apostle to the Gentiles, yet he never abandoned his Jewishness. Acts chapter 21, which we'll see soon. Acts chapter 21, but look at verses 20 to 24. It says, when they heard it, they glorified the Lord, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many myriads of Jews there are who have believed, and they are all zealous for the law. But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, nor to walk according to their customs. What then? The assembly must certainly meet, for they will hear that you have come. Therefore, do what we tell you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be purified with them, and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads, and that all may know that those things of which they were informed concerning you are nothing, but that you yourself also walk orderly and keep the law. Paul remained a Jew. He didn't stop being a Jew, even though he was the apostle to the Gentiles as a Christian servant. And second, in this transition, Paul visited Ephesus to get a glimpse. He visited Ephesus for a glimpse. Think of verses 19 to 21. And he came to Ephesus and left them there, but he himself entered the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to stay a longer time with them, he did not consent, but took leave of them, saying, I must by all means keep this coming feast in Jerusalem, but I will return to you, God willing. And he sailed from Ephesus. Verse 18 reported that Aquila and Priscilla traveled with Paul. Apparently, they remained at Ephesus to work. They were very active after Paul departed. Look at Acts 18, verse 26. So he, Apollos, began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Aquila and Priscilla heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. This is just a quick visit, nothing more. When traveling, Ephesus was a normal port of call. So Paul was in a hurry to get to Jerusalem, but he promised to return. The feast was drawing near that he committed to attend. The third missionary journey would bring him back. Aquila and Priscilla will continue the witness in the meantime. So Paul makes his vow. Paul makes his quick visit to Ephesus, and then he visits Jerusalem for a feast during this transition to Ephesus. Verse 22, and when he had landed at Caesarea and gone up and greeted the church, he went down to Antioch. Caesarea was the primary port for Jerusalem, up to the holy city on Mount Zion. Paul visited the church, but that was not the only reason he traveled to Jerusalem. Still remained a good while, took leave, hair cut, had taken a vow, must keep this coming feast. My view? Paul received the vision from God to stay at Corinth. He made a vow to work there until the time of the feast, and then ended the vow when that time came. So according to the Nazirite vow, the apostle cut his hair and went down to Jerusalem to make the prescribed sacrifice. Then he went down to Antioch. The journey was completed. And then the next missionary journey, the third journey, he goes back to Ephesus. You have a great day.